Using CSS3, it's now possible to include a wide variety of fonts on your web page. This can be a little bit more complex than it appears, so let's go ahead and get started with the basics. So here you can see that we have a basic HTML page. We just have 3 paragraphs here, nothing really special. And if we switch over to our text editor, you can see the markup here, just 3 paragraphs inside of a wrapper div. And let's go ahead and switch over to our CSS. Now, the property that you're probably already familiar with is font family. So let's go ahead and use font family on one of our paragraphs. Now, our paragraphs don't have any kind of identifier like a class or an ID, so let's go ahead and select all the paragraphs, and then we'll use the nth child pseudo class, which is new in CSS3, and we'll go ahead and select the second paragraph. So let's go ahead and use the font family property, and we'll just set this to Helvetica, and we'll say sans serif, just like that. And we'll switch over to the browser and refresh, and you can see that our second paragraph here has changed. Now, if we go ahead and switch back, we can try other things like Verdana instead of Helvetica, and that's what that looks like. And we could try a serifed font like Georgia, and when we switch over and refresh, there's what that looks like. Now, as you're probably aware, the selection of web fonts that most clients support is fairly limited. You can't really use a huge variety of fonts very safely. Fonts on the web have just been limited for a long time, and that's just a fact of life. However, with the introduction of the CSS3 specification comes the font face rule, and that really opens up the doors to using a huge variety of fonts. Now, the problem is licensing. You can't really use a whole bunch of different fonts without running into complex licensing issues with font foundries. However, fortunately, there have been several groups that have come together that offer free fonts that you can use for whatever you want. And one of my favorite ones is the League of Movable Type. They don't have a huge selection, but the selection they do have is pretty nice. So we're going to go ahead and use this font here called Orbitron. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and we can kind of get a little preview here of what this font is going to look like. It looks pretty cool. And then we'll just go ahead and click download here, and the font should download fairly quickly. Now what I've done is I've gone ahead and put several of these fonts into our CSS directories. So we have Chunk, LeagueScript, Orbitron, which we just downloaded, and Railway. So we'll go ahead and close this, and let's go ahead and use Orbitron. So the first thing we need to do is we need to define a font face rule. And to do that, the syntax looks like this. We'll type an @, type font dash face, open our curly braces, and inside we're going to first name our font. And to name our font, we'll use the font family property again, and we're going to just call this one Orbitron. And then we need to specify a source URL for our font. Now, I've simplified things and I've just put all of our fonts into our CSS directory. Of course, you could go ahead and create a fonts folder if you wanted to, and then navigate out of the CSS directory and into the fonts folder. Or you can set up your directory structure really however you want. So we'll go ahead and type URL, and inside here we'll link to our font, and it's again inside of the same directory as our CSS, so we can just type orbitron-bold.otf, and now we can go ahead and scroll down to our font family property on our paragraphs, and we can go ahead and use Orbitron. So we'll go ahead and type Orbitron, and then we need to have a few fallbacks here. So we'll go ahead and say Helvetica is our first fallback, and then we'll just say a sans serif font is our second fallback. So when we go ahead and switch back to the browser and refresh the page, you can see that we're now using this Orbitron font even though it's not currently installed on our computer. We've just gone ahead and downloaded it from the directory. And this is fully selectable text. So we can go ahead and select this. And if we go ahead and just view the source here, you can see that absolutely nothing has changed. This looks exactly the same as the markup in our text editor. So this is all real text. This is not using any kind of image, which is an important distinction to make. Now that just about wraps up the basics, but let's go ahead and try one more font before we finish up here. So we'll go ahead and switch back to our text editor, and I'm going to use a font called Chunk 5. So we'll just say Chunk is the name of our font, which we'll go ahead and use down here. And then the actual name of the file is chunk with a capital C .otf. And then we can go ahead and change our font family on our paragraph to say chunk. And if we go ahead and switch back to Google Chrome and refresh the page, you can see that we're now using the serifed font Chunk 5. That covers the basic syntax of the font face rule. In the next video, we'll learn more about font face.